the Rock, ladies and gentlemen. We got Julia Rock in the building here on the Red Circle Talk podcast. I am honored. Listen, Julia, before we start, I got to keep it 100 with you. I've been following you for a long time, a couple of years at least. And I don't think when we connected at the TEDx event here in the Atlanta area that I even had the chance to mention it to you. But I want to let you know you popped up on my feed a couple years ago. And I was like, she is saying all of the things that I want to hear. She is talking about the content. She is like, I'm all about like, professionals growing in the space and just creating their own path. And you were like speaking to me at the time because I was actually in a transition moving over from one career to another. So I've been in the nonprofit field for a very long time, and I was making a transition into the private sector while shifting career path. So it was like you were speaking to me. So I just wanted to take time to thank you for all of the light that you shared with me before we even connected in person. And now to just be here on this podcast with me, it's a surreal moment. So thank you.
Oh my God, that warms my heart and just so much. I mean, because when you post things online, you're just like, hey, I'm putting it out into the universe, right? And you hope someone's listening. You never know who's listening, but I continue to speak from the heart. And career transitions are so important because I feel like these are folks that maybe get left behind because it's not a traditional just one foot in front of the other. It's like, hey, you've got to shift your life, you've got to make these changes. You may not have all these skills. And so I like, that's the group I cater to. So the fact that you found that content means so much to me. And I just want you to know, when I saw your TEDx, I was like, he's speaking to me. And so it's so crazy that it's like now we have the chance to connect. Cause I'm like, I need to talk to that guy. Like, because the words were just so powerful. I mean, they continue to resonate with me over a month later. So I'm just honored to even be here.
Man, this is a heck of an intro. We are rolling right now. Listen, Julia, one thing that I mentioned off air, but I'll say it on air, is that so many folks want to know how to get onto the TEDx stage, how to get on the red circle, get on the red dot. And we're bringing speakers here to share their stories. One thing that I'm learning is that everyone's journey is a little different. And in your talk, Why Everyone Loses When Employees Burn Out, which is new, so make sure you folks go check it out on YouTube and let's run it up and continue to, push that talk because it's growing fast. I saw that when I went to check it out. And you talked about that miserable experience in your first role, and I think about your origins, like how you started off in this job that kind of like drained your energy. But then on the flip side, now you help people with their careers. Talk to me about how that connected to you ending up on a TEDx stage. Just talk to me how that transition from being that employee who is in a job that you weren't happy with, reaching up and getting the job you wanted, and now helping people, and then eventually getting on the world's largest stage. Somebody called it the Super Bowl of public speaking.
Yeah, just taking a moment to think about that. Even when I started in my career, I felt like I was meant for more. And so being in that dead end role and feeling like I am living below my potential, there was always something that was nagging at me that I could do and be more. My parents raised me to do and be more. And so that was always kind of the in the back of my mind. So as I continued to progress in my career, I was always looking for how can I grow? How can I accelerate? How can I, get to that next level? And ultimately, as I continued that career progression, I got to a point where I was in senior leadership and I was asking myself, so senior finance leadership, and I was asking myself, how do I feel about where I am now? What is the next level for me? What is the next step? And I was beginning to feel like I was ready for kind of like that next level of, call it elevation, or that next level of sharing my story with other people because I had been through so much. It's easy to look from the outside and say, oh, your career is growing, it's awesome. But at the same time, I was dealing with so much adversity at work, right? I was dealing with whether it's racism, I was dealing with people who were undermining my authority, I was dealing with people who were berating me at work. I was dealing with so much, even in that process of elevation in my career. And so I got to a point to say, I can't keep this inside, especially since I was coaching people as part of my business as well. I said, how can I start to share this message? Because I know I'm not the only one going through it because my clients are going through it. And so that's really where I started to think about doing a TEDx talk and being able to shine a light on that. And so that's when I actually got into the process to really say, how can I package all of this experience, this painful experience, and turn it into something that other people can be inspired and motivated by, and also know that they're not alone on their journey.
That's so good. One thing that jumped out to me when you were speaking there, you said, I can't keep this inside. And that really spoke to me. Talk about being a corporate leader, because we might have some corporate leaders listening who have a message. They need to share that message, but they might think, I'm a corporate leader. That's just what it is. But I can't get on the TEDx stage. That's not me. It would be nice, but I can't. Someone is going through that right now, because I know even for me as a professional, there were times where that imposter syndrome snuck in, and it was like, all right, whatever, good luck. Watching Simon Sinek and Brene Brown all those years ago, like, I could do that. And then now to be here on the other side of it, I know someone else is experiencing that. So talk to me about, I can't keep that inside, and speak to the corporate speakers, or the corporate leaders out there who maybe have a message to share.
Yeah, so one thing that I have learned on my journey is that your story may help someone else. And so by you continuing to hold it in, you're robbing someone else of the opportunity, of the motivation, of the experience that could transform their lives, because you think your story isn't big enough or important enough to share. So for that corporate leader who's listening, your experience on a day-to-day, your experience with your teams, your experience with your management, there's someone out there that is struggling with the exact same thing and needs to hear from you, because they may not have the voice to speak and you do. And if you keep that, that means there's someone else who's not going to get that, push through or that breakthrough that they need. And so honestly, that's really what pushed me, was that my story, I was like, my story isn't that big of a deal. Like, people deal with corporate crap all the time. But I'll tell you, after my talk came out, people have DM'd me, emailed me, commented about how much this talk resonated with them and how much they saw themselves in my story. And so for any corporate leader that's out there, you'd be surprised how many people need to hear what you have to say.
And any corporate leaders out there who are looking for speakers to come bless their stage, their teams, the lead trainings, make sure that you check out the links below to connect with Julia here. Thank you for sharing that, because I like to say to people I work with, my clients, that if they don't share their message, they're being selfish, right? You don't know, just like you said at the top of the episode, right? You put stuff out there, and you never know how it can impact people. You didn't know that I was going through this like historic life and career shift in my life when your content fell on my feed, and that corporate leader out there could probably do the same for someone else. So, and to me, I think I'm harsh when I say that to people, but I think I have to be, because it's selfish. Like, those are not your gifts to keep to yourself. Those are gifts that you received from whatever you believe in, or whatever, path you walk in your life. And I just think it's like our duty, if it's on our heart to share it. What's the worst that could happen?
Honestly, and to make it even more powerful, thinking about the world that we live in today, people are struggling with so much. You have no idea how the words you share may actually save someone's life and stop them from doing something that may harm themselves, may harm others, may keep them stuck in a situation that's dangerous for them, whatever it might be. You never know that you can stop disaster from happening for someone just by sharing your story and how you walk through it. And it doesn't have to be the prettiest, the sexiest, the most polished thing. It's just more so about being authentic and genuine, that it reaches people.
And it trips me out that people don't get that, Julia. Sometimes I talk to people who are like, whatever there's always like a barrier, right? There's a barrier to entry to everything, right? Some are wider force fields or wider barriers, but at the end of the day, like I'm trying to get through to people on this message. So I just love the way you put that. I want to talk about your process next though, because I could go. This is like a whole nother podcast.
I know, I know, I know. Okay, we're gonna keep
Because
moving.
I could totally go in on this because I think it deserves that. But let's keep it pushing because I want to talk about the process now. So you shared a little bit about the seeds of your journey planting these seeds, you knowing that you couldn't keep this inside, and your story impacting people, and now you want to do a TEDx talk. Talk to me about your process of selection, application, any support that you received. Just share a little bit with the audience on that.
Yeah, so I'll be honest. I had the heart to do the TEDx because I was like, I can't keep the message inside, but it wasn't something I had yet pursued. And so I came in contact with a coach. So his name is Daryl Stinson. And honestly, talking to him and understanding the process behind TED and realizing that, hey, I could actually do it. It is a possible thing. That's really where I got started. So I tell people all the time, I didn't do it by myself. I wasn't out here Googling in perpetuity. I hired a coach and made that investment. But I will say, even though you get a coach, there's so much work that you have to do personally with actually coming up with the idea and bouncing it off your coach and making sure that it's an idea that's worth spreading. I think TED has changed their tagline now, but for a long time it was the what is your idea, your unique idea worth spreading. And so I took some time with that. And then when you think about the application process, the coaching organization, Daryl's team, they helped me with that. But I had to put together specifically like about my idea. I had to put together 2 minute and 1 minute videos. I had to share why my talk would impact the world and who would it impact, how would the world change. And so when you're creating your TEDx idea, it's one thing to say, hey, I want to share this, but you've got to think about what is the impact on the world by you sharing this, like who benefits from this, how do things change or transform for people. And I'll be honest, that took me a while. I was like, I don't know, I mean, I guess people are gonna have less burnout, right? You know what I mean? And just being honest, but taking time to take a step back to think about the mental health improvements when you're not burnt out, the impact on families, the impact on communities, the impact on organizations and the productivity and the morale. And so going through that process and having a coach can really help you in that iteration to make sure that you're digging as deep as you can so that when you have the applications or the interviews that you're able to communicate that effectively.
So it's fair to say you would recommend coaching, but you definitely would recommend Daryl Stinson.
For sure, for sure. Daryl, I mean, is a no nonsense coach. So, so he'll whip you into shape. There's no half stepping it. But I'll just say for those who are listening, my talk did, I think it was over 20,000 views in the first few days. So the process works, guys.
So I'm gonna make sure that I drop Daryl's information in the notes as well for folks who want to connect with him. Daryl is a light, and his wife Brittany. They like I love them so much, Julia. Like it's like it like brings a tear to my eyes anytime I think about who I was before I met them and who I am now. So yeah, that's like I love them. It's that's. Whew, those are my people. Those are my people.
And I just want to share something, one more additional thing about that coaching process is because what happened for me was more of a transformation, not just putting a talk together. That's the difference with just doing a talk and you're doing the Google in perpetuity or the YouTube versus getting a coach who understands who you need to become to deliver a talk like that. And even though I had the idea, there were some things I had to unlearn. There were some parts of me I had to let go. I had to open up, be more vulnerable. There was so much work that I had to do personally that I think I could have only gotten through coaching versus trying to DIY myself to the TEDx stage. Could I have landed a TEDx stage on my own? Possibly. But in terms of the quality of talk and then who I am now as a keynote speaker and coach and consultant, all of that work, it feeds into the rest of my life and the rest of my business. So it steps beyond the TEDx platform.
That part. They don't talk about that part. Um,
Hmm.
so if you have the means and the resources to get a coach, you would recommend getting a coach. What about
Absolutely.
if I don't have resources? What kind of recommendations do you have for people who are trying to figure it out on their own? If you had any tips, what would you recommend?
Well, first it would be platforms like this, being able to listen to what you're sharing here. So thank you for creating this space to really let people know the real, right? Because people see the glitz and the glamour on the TEDx stage. It's like, oh, I can do that, but it's like, well, here's the real tea behind the process. So definitely platforms like this. And I would just say engage as many speakers as you can. Get an understanding as to what stages are looking for, understand what the interview process is like, understanding what ideas have gained traction versus those that maybe not have done as well. I would listen to speakers that you respect. You talked about Simon Sinek and Brene Brown and others, looking at those folks and seeing how they deliver their talks. There are a lot of organizations out there who will tell you, hey, I can help you be a TEDx speaker. But if you really don't have the means, it's really about research and talking to the people that have actually been on stage.
Mm. Yep, I agree with you on all of that. I'd add one more thing is to get obsessed with it. And people's minds work differently. I'm a very obsessive type of consumer of content or activities. So like if I'm in a basketball state of mind, like I'm going to be like gung ho basketball all day, every day, and tomorrow and the day after that. But when it came to me deciding, the moment that I decided that I wanted to do this, I became obsessed. I have a journal, Julia, of every TEDx talk I've watched. Like I am like a super fanatic of the culture. So that's another thing I would recommend is get obsessed with it, get into Facebook groups, get onto email lists. The actual speakers that you like, follow them. Julia
Yep.
is very approachable. Like you could look her up and like go follow her on LinkedIn, send her a DM, and I promise you she would respond. So that's another thing. I think there's this whole like, this glass case around TED and TEDx speakers, but we're just humans at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And when you feel that kind of that glass, box or case around the speakers, you have to think about, well, how much does this mean to you? Because when you're really gung ho about something, I don't care who it is. It's President Obama. We're gonna be in these DMs. Hey there, I saw that you did a TEDx. Like, I mean, I don't care, because you have to be obsessed with achieving your goals. And so you can't let someone's prestige or whatever stop you from going after what you want. So getting obsessed and keeping in mind that this is your goal. So it doesn't matter who it is, send them a DM, hit them up in an email, and get the conversation started.
Mm, shoot your shot. Just shoot your shot. So let's talk about now. We went through the seeds that were planted. We talked about the application, coaching, and the selection process. Actually, let's talk a little bit about the selection process. Talk to me about like when you found out, like you got an email or something. Walk me through that as detailed as you can remember.
Yeah, so I know that they were helping me with a couple of different stages, and we were sending emails and follow ups and so forth, and you're kind of just like one of these, hoping one of these, and then I got the email where it's like, hey, we're pleased to inform you that you've been selected, and I'm just like, oh my god. And so getting that email, and then they also provide some details in it as to key dates and so forth. So you kind of get on this high, and then you're like, okay, wait, let me see, when is the TEDx? How much time do I have? Because then you have to realize, okay, if my talk is not fully complete, I need to get on with it, right? So it was definitely that moment of euphoria and celebration. So I hit up Daryl and all that kind of stuff. We're celebrating and doing the stuff, and then it's like, all right, time to get to work.
Wow, I love that. That warms my heart. Oh man, my experience when I got my email, I was almost like shocked and like in disbelief for a couple of days. I didn't like pull out my paperwork, sign it, send it back. I was kind of like almost like scared. I was like, what? So I wanted this really bad, and then I thought about my mom, my mom, rest her soul, my brother, and they were just telling me like, you got to share our story, you got to get it out there, and here I
Yes.
am. So thanks for sharing that. So now we've been selected, we're hyped, but then the realization that you actually have to prepare and execute this talk. So talk to me about your creative process, about writing. Did you type it? Did you write it and then take it to documents? What was the editing process like? And then also, if you could share a little bit about your rehearsal practices, memorization tips, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So, and just to quickly go back to the selection process, I think it was also a moment of, man, it's happening. I can do this,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
that kind of realization that hits you. That's like, it's happening. I'm the person. It's real life, right? It's not out there for just someone else to grasp. It's for me too. And that was one of the biggest feelings as well as part of that celebration. Like, hey, I'm her right now, you know.
Mm,
So definitely want to go back to that real quick. But when we think about the actual construction process, I'm a typing girly, especially when it comes to writing kind of long form content. So I started with an outline as to, kind of what my topic is and what my key points were that I wanted to share. And I kind of worked from that. And Daryl has a speech creation method. So we went through that as to what is it that we want people to feel and experience, what we want them to think. And so that helped me with structuring the outline. And then I actually tied stories to the different key points. So really making sure that I'm not just sharing points from thin air, making sure that the stories were personal. And then I also got into the research to highlight those points as well. I'll tell you, if you're doing a TEDx talk, you want them to be well researched. And so I spent a lot of time researching the statistics around burnout, around what happens with trauma, what happens with loss of identity and depression. I took some time to really do the research. And is when I got those pieces together, that's when I started to form it in the Word document. But I had it in outline first before I actually put it in kind of paragraph form. And I'll tell you, there were several drafts of it because there were parts that were too long. There was research that maybe was like, okay, this is too much. And so having that iterative process with Daryl as to is this really saying what I needed to say? Like at the very beginning, I had a whole like chunk that he was like, you don't need any of this. He's like, you're using 300 words when 20 would do here, right? And so it's go and having someone to help you with that iteration is really important. So that's why a coach would help, or at least like a writing coach, perhaps. And I will say the thing about TED is because it's timed, right? This is not a place where you can riff and do your thing and let it just flow. None of that, because you have to. You got 18 minutes, so stick within your 18 minutes. And so that also helped to kind of keep me grounded as to making sure I'm saying the thing and making the points very kind of concretely and not dancing around. And so when we think about the rehearsal process, I'll just say I did it a couple of different ways. I did it from front to back, kind of just going through the normal start to finish. But then I also I started doing it from different points. Like I would start at the end and then work my way backward to the beginning. I know, right? I know it seems weird, but then so I did that, and then I started the story at different, or started this talk at different points. I would start from this piece of research. I would start from my second point. I would start from this story or that story, so that at the end of the day, if I lost it, I knew where my anchor points were. I knew my stories. I knew my research, so that I could always fluff the middle. Right? I'm a corporate leader. We have a PhD in BS, right? So worst case scenario, I could BS the rest as long as I had the key points. And so that's how I really rehearse. And I'll tell you, I spent a lot of time doing the talk by myself, but then I just got people on board, like friends. Another one of my friends is a TEDx organizer, so he's heard a gazillion TEDx talks, so I ran it for him. And I just had normal people who didn't have any investment. I ran the talk for them so I could get just candid feedback. I'm like, just tell me where the holes are. And they were like, man, you sound like a drill sergeant. You sound like a state trooper. I'm like, state trooper? Oh God. Like my friends were not holding back, bruh. So that's also how the process went, is getting real time feedback during the rehearsal process as well.
Mm, mm. The biggest nugget there was the back to front, front to back, because many of the speakers, well, actually not many, just I interviewed a few people so far, and one person did kind of like bullet points and then went off of their bullet points because they know that they weren't good at memorizing, but they had a script, but they really just went off their bullet points to get them flowing in that topic. The other one did like chunks. So memorize a chunk, worked on that, memorize a chunk, and then put it all together. That's what I did, but I also incorporated anchor points as well, where I would like I had it where I used the memory palace technique, where I
Mm.
have one image or thing that would trigger me for the first line of that section. For example, the first part of my speech is like my objective. You know, my objective for you is. So I had a picture of like Target, the Target logo. So when I would so
Oh,
when I would memorize the sections, I would just trigger the words. It would be like Jaheim, the song just in case I don't make it right. So the first line is just in case. So I did that as my trigger point. So it's fascinating to hear the way different people do it. Were there any moments in the rehearsal process where it was like you were like, man, I'm gonna do my thing. Like I got this in the bag. Where was that moment? Because I know for me at the beginning, I was like, that's a lot of chunks and I like to memorize. But then I remember when I started getting it, I was really quick. I was at an outdoor space behind a railroad track. And I was doing a recorded rehearsal, and a train came. And as it came, it didn't shake me, and I walked up to my camera and continued my section. That was the moment that I was like, "Oh my God, I got this." When was your moment that you knew you were gonna rock it? Rock it. I love that.
so here's the thing. It was actually when I did the run through for my friend who's the TEDx organizer. And I was just like, I just want you to give me the facts. And he's like, that talk is phenomenal. He's like, you got this in the bag. He's because he gave me some feedback around how the delivery a little bit, but in terms of the actual talk, he was like, listen, if you deliver this talk the way that you have it, he's like that talk is phenomenal. And I was like, dang, maybe it is. So that was really the moment for me, because it's one thing to be hyping yourself, but it's another thing for someone who hadn't heard the talk before, who just kind of knew your idea, and then they're just hearing it cold. And there's someone who has heard a gazillion TEDx talks in their lifetime, and then they hear yours and they're like, no, that talk is phenomenal. Just
Mm,
go do it. I was
love
like,
it.
okay.
I love that. I love that. So you shared the creative process, rehearsals. Now we're going to the venue. Where did you fly there? Did you drive there? When you arrived there, the rug. Talk to me about the execution of the talk now. Like what it was like being in the venue, like doing your dress rehearsal if there was one. Just give us the play by play on that.
Whew, well. So in my case, it was different because I actually got delayed. So I missed the entire dry run. And because I got stuck, I had because I was coming from Argentina. So, fun fact, I was living in Argentina when I was supposed to do a TEDx talk in California. So that's fun. So I definitely hopped on one plane. I got to Dallas, and they're like, "Your flight doesn't leave till tomorrow. Good luck." And I was just like, "Okay." So I missed the entire dry run. And so I remember just feeling like, okay, I just have to get there and get to do my talk. And but the problem was my stuff got delivered late, like my outfit for the day. So the morning of the TEDx talk, I'm in there with like a steamer and iron steam in the bathroom, just trying to get the outfit together. Like it was just a whole mess. But I told myself, I'm like, I have to calm down. And so I got an Uber driver. the Uber driver, I was like, "Hey, can I run my TEDx talk in here?" He's like, "Sure." He's like, "Go for it." And so I'm sitting in the Uber because my hotel was far enough away from the venue that I could rehearse the TEDx talk. And so I went through it, and he was like, "Man, that talk was really good. Good luck." So it was crazy. So I got there. I got there really early so I could see the stage and everything. But here's the fun fact. So I get there and I'm like, "Oh man, is there going to be a confidence monitor or anything?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "Is there going to be a timer or anything?" No. So it was literally like, "Go up there and do your best." And so it was insane, from the delay to I put on the wrong size pants. It was in this with the steamer in the hotel room, rehearsing with the Uber driver one last time. Like it was an experience just getting to the venue. I'll tell you that.
Wow. Man, that's good. That might be the most interesting one so far. That is good. That is good. So now you did the talk. Talk to me about the after effects, how it's impacted you as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, but also just with it finished. Cause I know for me, like I would like literally walk around running that bad boy in my mind, like mumbling under my breath at the supermarket, saying it.
Brushing my teeth,
Yeah.
doing my
How is it?
hair. Yeah.
How is it for you now? Like after it's done, do you still like kind of like still run it? Or like, are you totally like you had a baby and you're like, okay, let that baby grow up on the internet now? Talk to me about life after your talk.
So I'll just tell you, like one of the key stories from that talk, it shows up in a lot of my keynotes and my speeches. So there's still some moments where I actually go back to the full talk just because of that story. And I, especially like the very beginning, I'll run it because it was always a vibe, right? It's like a couple of years ago, like I started in my head. But after it, I'll just say that because of the transformation that I went through, I was just different after that talk. I couldn't just go back to running my business the same way and being the same person, because the message that I shared and that was on my spirit was so powerful, because it was beyond burnout. It was really tapping into who you are, your own identity, healing from trauma. And I'm like, I can't share this message and be this ambassador and then go back to living life however I had been living it, especially after all the unlearning and the breaking down and the vulnerability that I had to go through to become the person that gave that talk. So afterwards, it transformed how I delivered messages and speeches, because I was willing to tell more personal stories and get more engaged with my audiences. And even as I got back to my corporate job at the time, I felt like I was building deeper connections with my team because of the sense of vulnerability that I had gotten to. And I'll tell you that, I'm no longer in corporate because of going through that process. I asked myself, am I living the life that I should be? Am I serving the people I should be in the fullest capacity that God has given me? And the answer that I kept getting as I prayed and meditated on it, the answer was like, no. And let me give you a fun fact here. Let me give you a fun
I love your fun facts. Keep going.
So another fun fact. So my talk, it came out in February of 2023. But listen to this. Everyone else's talk came out in the September, October timeframe I'm sorry, my talk came out February 24. Everyone's came out September or October of 23. And so I'm asking and following up with the stage, what happened, what happened, what happened. And they're like, we don't know. We don't know. We pulled it, we resubmitted it, December of 23, nothing. And I'm sitting there and I'm begging God. I'm like, I put in all this work. I've told people that I had a TEDx talk. Now I'm looking like a fraud out here. I'm out here capping about being a TEDx speaker. This is crazy. Just ruining my rep. And so finally, I made the decision that I was going to leave my corporate job. I said, God, you have been knocking on the door of my heart and telling me that this is the time to make a move. Will you believe I made that decision on a Sunday? Wednesday of that week, I was going to email Ted myself and say, damn it, where is my talk? But I sent before I sent the email, I went to the TEDx YouTube. I said, just check one more time. And guess whose TEDx talk was out there with over 20,000 views? I was like, okay, God, you be doing this stuff. I get it now. I just had to listen. I just had to listen.
Man, that's a good story. That is solid, solid gold. So you talked about leaving, but also like this talk influencing you in terms of like your corporate speaking and your speaking engagements. We have corporate leaders who probably came to this episode for you. I'm going to title it in a way that hopefully they'll come here because they need to hear this message. Talk to me about some of the topics that you cover with your speeches, talks, and speaking engagements.
Absolutely. So burnout is definitely one that I talk about, partially because it's personal to me, but also it ties back to key things that corporate leaders are looking at, which is employee engagement and retention. When employees are burnt out, they're no longer engaged. They don't want to do your work. They don't want to do your projects. They don't want nothing. They just want to be left alone. And you see morale and productivity go through the floor. And then that's when you start to see turnover and people leaving the organization. And I also talk about, so it's burnout, employee engagement, and retention. And I also talk about leadership development. Part of what can also impact the engagement and the retention and how people feel at work are the leaders who are at the organization. They set the tone, they set the culture. And so if they're not tapping into who they are, if they're not courageous, if they don't understand how to actually interact with their people, if they're not developing themselves, then they're going to see the impact on their teams. And so that's why leadership development is at the forefront of all the speaking that I do, simply because leaders set the tone for organizations, for cultures, and for the experiences that employees can have.
That's, again, definitely my language. Like that is like the whole employee engagement, staff culture, like that is my jammy jam. Again, like we could probably do a whole episode just on that.
Yeah.
But I do have one more big question for you. Are you ready?
All right, wait, let me sit up. Here we go. All right.
All right. And take your time on this one because we'll close with this one. This one is huge. And I'm sure someone out there has the same question. I'm a corporate leader. I have an idea that I believe it's worth sharing. I've thought about getting on a TEDx stage. I've even maybe been to the website, got discouraged because I couldn't find an application link. I watch TEDx talks all the time, and I know that I'm supposed to be on that TED stage. What would you say to that corporate leader right now who's kind of maybe having some doubts about taking the steps to get on to that red circle?
What I would say is, corporate leader, let your success and your goals be bigger and mean more to you than your fears. Because if those things mean more to you, if the success and the impact you want to have on the world mean more to you than your fears, then you can't just sit there. You can't just keep visiting the website and then clicking the X in the upper right corner. You've got to go through the process. And if you're feeling alone, that's what your family's for. That's what your network is for. That's what we're for. They can reach out to both of us and have a conversation. We've been where you are. We've felt the imposter syndrome, but you have to think that the people that you are watching, they also had their moments of imposter syndrome. Simon Sinek, who's charging $300,000 a speech now, probably what didn't start out that way. Right? Brene Brown didn't start out that way. Any of the speakers that you see now, Eric Thomas, Jeremy Anderson, any of these people that you may see online who are giving these amazing speeches, they had to start somewhere. And also what's important for you to remember is, even if you don't feel like you're the best speaker or the most polished, the fact is you are speaking to someone. And the message that you have, no matter how it's coming out, that person is sitting there waiting to hear that message specifically from you. There's no one else on the planet that can give that person that message other than you. So if you let your fears hold you back from doing what you know you're supposed to, that person is being robbed of an experience that will change their life. and you're being robbed of an experience that will change your life when you see the impact, when you see how people, react and engage with you and are motivated to change and transform just by hearing you speak.
Mm-mm. Well, Julia Rock, you are welcome to join us here anytime you want. You dropped so many nuggets and you've definitely shared some of your light with us this evening. Grateful for you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, this was a huge honor for me to even be here. So thank you for being willing to let me share my story and just be part of your platform today. I hope that folks are inspired and hopefully they're going to come and talk to you about your amazing talk. If you have not watched it, please go watch it immediately or sooner, as my dad would say. It's a talk that will absolutely change your life.
Thank you, Julia.